But this is not, this is,
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
do I use Gates? You get one? No, but I'll use Gates, because I don't use it right now. Yes, I don't have.
I've got a pen, I took it from Tony's desk.
I got a pen, I took it from Tony's.
So we'll just, let's call the meeting to order at 6:15.
Give me 2 seconds to pull up here so I can take the minutes.
And we've got minutes attached.
These are the draft. Which you might want to read through.
And we have a quorum. Jim, are you officially on, you're on this committee?
I'm on this committee now,
So we have a
officially,
quorum.
for the committee purposes, yes, we have a quorum now.
Okay.
I'm going to talk to the CRS people tomorrow. We just had our annual meeting 2 nights ago. I've got a little stuff to wrap up to finish with that.
Okay.
I'm probably not going to end up retiring from CRS because the succession thing hasn't worked out, but
Okay.
I just want to be able to give the board full notice of what everything is. When we originally did this, it was subject to this, that, and that.
Okay.
And so, as it goes right now, we're on track. So.
Was that originally their problem or your problem? I mean, you had a problem with
I
being
didn't know how
involved,
much
they
time
did.
and stuff would be involved, so
I see.
I just wanted to
And
make
so that
sure I
was
wasn't
your-
putting
yeah.
too much stuff on my plate.
But they weren't forbidding you.
Yeah, no, I know, I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
It's more, it's as long, you're on this committee, whether you were.
Yes, I'm on the committee, whether
Accepted.
Yeah, or not, yeah.
Dave's on his way.
Okay,
So if you could take a look at the minutes,
okay, thanks.
and we're being taped. So,
Do I vote on these since I wasn't there at that?
No,
I'm not even sure I was on by that point.
you don't, so you know what we'll do, we'll wait for Dave, we'll set the
Please do
minutes.
check what time was it called for?
This was 6:15. So why don't we, let's set.
Well, you have a quorum of the people that were on the board at that time.
You want, rather than split hairs.
Okay. We'll just do it later.
We'll just wait. Okay, welcome. Sorry, it's first on the agenda.
No worries.
Any comment, Jason? We're being taped again, so everyone's aware. Review of the current budget, variances and changes in current needs. For that, we'll go to the executive director.
There's been a lot of good news since our last meeting. If you remember, at the time, we were looking at what we thought was a cash flow issue, which is not something surprising for charters or startups really of any type. But when you look at the budget, both as originally proposed and in terms of the most recent budget that was sent out in December, the part of what it shows is certain times of the year when there are cash shortfalls in terms of cash flow, not even if the budget goes exactly as you think it's going to when you're projecting it. And we were nervous about it because of we have only 2 sources of income. One is the per head student allotment, whether you call it tuition or the state grant for that. And that comes in 4 times a year: September 30th, December 31st, March 31st, and June 30th. And one of the peculiarities of the whole funding system for charter schools is that they actually pay 3 months in arrears. So that you're operating from July 1, the beginning of the fiscal year, until September 30 before you actually get your first allotment. And then that pattern continues right through the year. So at the last meeting, we were really looking at that, and the other source is the 535 startup grant, and the 535 in our first year of operation, which is the year prior to opening, was $150,000, and that was increased by the state so that in our second year, instead of getting $150,000, we get $200,000. And then you have the possibility of a third year of startup funding at $200,000. And that 535, we received the first 3 months of the, or 4 months of the 535 prior to the review by the Board of Education in December, because we got the amount we would have been, had access to at the expected $20,000 per month. Then after the school was removed from probation by the board in December, those other monies were released and we had access to them. We received that payment since our last meeting, where we had not received any of that grant money until just in the past few weeks. So when we met last time, we were actually taking a look at what are our operating expenditures per month, which run about $60,000. Remember from our minutes that those critical operating expenditures, from insurance to payroll to run about $60,000 a month. And the next tuition payment from the state is on the 31st. So we were looking at getting from here to the 1st of March. And as of this morning, we have $89,000 in our accounts, split between our money market account, checking.
What shifted that? Because that's abrupt.
Because in a sort of snafu, I guess, bureaucratic, the state had forgotten, or the board, the Department of Education had forgotten to actually unfreeze the account. And so the requests were never processed for the funding to come over into our money market.
Is that back for that half of December, January, and February thing?
Yeah, so that's right. So
Well, that was 50 we were looking for, and we supposedly had 30, so we thought we had 80. Now we have 89, so we're really only 9,000 to the plus. So
10 from December.
10 from December, all of January, all of February.
That's 50.
And part of March. So we received a payment for 60.
Okay, so we got half of March?
Yes, right.
Okay.
And then and that's actually also not unusual. It's not, the state sort of anticipates that you're going to draw it down in equal payments. But in fact, the charters can request more at any time, so that if they have front-loaded or upfront costs, let's say for a phone system or a computer database, student record management system, some of those are not able to be spread out. And
did you have to shake the trade, or they just were?
No. They were actually, I think, surprised that it hadn't actually been done, and took care of it very quickly. They were really helpful.
So 89, that will take us from, all right, so we're...
But then on top of that, just to add to the picture, we have a special education grant. You remember we have a significant population of students that require special support. So we have a grant of $18,900 that will also come in the next few weeks to go towards support of the program, which is fantastic.
Can I ask a question, just so because I'm stupid? Our 535 grant is 200,000. How do you get 20,000 a month divided by 12, or doesn't it work like that?
Because the expectation is that you will be able to draw down on it during the school year. So it's 10 months of drawdown
That makes sense.
At 20,000 per month. But as I say, schools sometimes draw down much more significantly on it. And you just write an amendment indicating why you need the funding when you need it.
So if we're, okay, so for the cash concern that we covered in the last meeting, and actually benchmarked, so essentially saying payables at about 120, cash at 150, but then a monthly required expense of 30 for payroll, plus or minus.
Yep.
We should get at some of the changes that will affect that. Rent of 19, some hourly expense that we would have to meet, and then insurance gets to about 60 a month.
Correct.
which is, that's fine, holding that number, but also knowing that there are payables that we have to get at. So for now, at a certain point on an operating basis, the cash is everything.
Correct.
It will never not be, cash as a paramount issue, because we will always just be above where we need to be. These expenses can't be missed, so that's what the cash requirement is all about. So we start there. Now we get to an adjustment of the budget as we
Well, can I
look
just
at-
ask you about what you said? You said 110 in payables, and we have a 60
Well, this was as of the last meeting.
Gotcha.
120,
All right.
but then the payables get further characterized, and I don't think we've got a up-to-date payables report here.
No, it's being put together by,
Is part of that 120, there's some of the 60 nut is part of the 120 payables?
No.
So we have 120 in addition to?
Yes,
the
but
60.
as you push into the payables piece, there are some that are held in abeyance.
Sure. Like
So,
lawyers, sorry.
yeah, that's right, and a few others who were more sizable. And next time we will have the report, because that's a.
But can I in my
But to
exercise?
finish the point though,
Yeah.
it's, some of these are, the idea from the last meeting, as in the draft minutes, was, let's start to meet a payable strategy. We need to address it. It's not a new effort for a small enterprise, but we need to address it. We'll get to that in a second, about whether or not we've been able to make any progress on that. And some other things that hold the payables tight, so that we won't raise the payable level, which is half the battle in getting it to.
But can one informally, ballpark, in a macro way, think, 60 a month in the month of March is our nut. We have 90 in the bank, plus another 18.9 sitting in there. Those two relate, so that at least we can make it to the next check,
They
is what I'm
do,
saying.
yeah, they relate in that you need to hit the monthly expense.
Yes, and we can make it to March 31st check without, remember, we were sweating about it, we have to get
But
it
that
where it's
doesn't
long.
answer the question, okay, so what's the
Payables.
what's the budget look like from here to a year from now, or to a year from June?
but I think
What is it
what-
we're gonna do going, this gets to the issue of the different variables that have to be folded in. So right now, we have an operating budget that is effectively out of date, because we've had personnel changes that we can get to, that actually positively impact the budget. We've got an enrollment that's gone up to 86 students. We have a full lottery and a reporting requirement for what the headcount looks like next year, which looks pretty good, but we don't know what it is yet. Once we know what that is, then we'll know exactly what the revenue picture looks like and the timing of payments from the state. Also, we'll be able to fold in each of these other things. For instance, there is a part-time position here. Is the nurse part-time?
Yeah, that's correct.
So there's a part-time nurse who we may see some alternatives to that would reduce the hourly expense. That's an effective change. There's some other changes that Tony can get to for a second, but all those things together, all those changes should be put into a budget so that we're looking at and approving as a finance committee at the next meeting, a recommendation to the board.
Is our,
Does that make sense?
Sorry, no, I want to talk about the governance issue for a second on that, but, so you anticipate like going to the regular board meeting tonight, saying, we recognize that we need a new board-approved budget,
Right.
and then, but it won't obviously be for tonight, because we're pulling together information still from the lottery and all these things, and all these jobs and whatever happened, so the idea would be,
Well,
would
and
the
the
next
payable,
meeting be?
we need the payable scheme in it too, so that we will start to address there are 4 or 5 key payables
Yeah,
that we need to address, and those get put into the operating budget.
and you're talking about a new budget between now and the end of our fiscal year in July.
No, I wanted to go out further.
Yeah, we have to do a whole big one for next year, but do we have to rebudget this year?
Well, it's a budget that would go from here to the end of next school year.
Okay, fine, that makes sense.
Because
Yeah.
we've got, some changes, and any change, whether it's material or not, should be reviewed and approved by the board.
Yeah.
At whatever the next meeting is. I guess my question is, what would be the next feasible meeting where we might have all this information ready to go? It's
That
not
would
going to be
be-
this meeting, is it going to be the April meeting?
That would be next, that would be number 4.
Well, certainly after March 7th, we're going to have a way better idea of how to make a budget.
Yeah, but it should be close after that.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because we'll know a number at which we can try and.
That's right. Well, we know it will be 200. If it's over 200, it'll be 200.
Yeah, that's right, if it's over 200, that's what I'm saying, we can actually do a budget after March 7th.
I think so.
Yeah.
So,
Are you going to try, will that third year 535 possible grant be put in this budget? I mean, does one say, 200K, we can go find out whether we have a shot at that?
Well, I mean, the most schools do get it. so
They do.
As far as I.
Oh, great, so you're likely to budget?
Yeah.
Okay.
But in a conservative budget, I would actually recommend that you're obviously carrying it separately, because your
Yeah.
operating expenses for
we wouldn't budget
personnel and everything else
That's what I
shouldn't
thought.
be mixed with a 535 grant for startup items that the school might.
no,
need.
the budget, I think, I would recommend, and the committee can decide what it wants to do, that we budget in a way that only allows positive surprises.
Okay.
So we're not going to budget money that we don't know we're going to get.
Yeah,
At Billboard, I learned to sandbag really well too.
Now, if it comes in, then we'll figure out what to do about it, but we won't face any assumptions.
But your comments raise some, I think, things that are good for the finance committee to work on
Yeah.
going forward, which is that none of this is outside the norm for charter schools at all. And almost all schools, not just charters, at some point have cash flow issues in the course of a regular fiscal year, just because of the way those payments come in. And so many of them have a credit line that they use during in those cash flow periods where they're challenged because of the payments from the state. So, for example, Salem Academy, I think, has a $200,000 credit line. And those are the kinds of things we want to set up and to pay attention to as we're putting all the pieces in order for next year.
It would be nice
So for now,
to avoid that.
So for now, cash is fine, although I don't think I'd recommend changing any of the other elements of what we discussed in the step before. So, we determine only those payables aged more than 90 days should be paid, and we should negotiate terms to pay the other significant ones down.
Yep.
So that's in your lab.
Yeah.
Do we have a sense for that now?
Just that we continue to work with, most of them are happy to work with us, and what we're needing to do as part of that step is to define amount with each of those vendors that works based on what we know about the cash flow, so that they're getting a monthly check from us that works on paying that down, knowing that by the end of the fiscal year that all of them will be paid off. Which we also know works within the system.
So if that becomes part of the revised budget for.
Correct.
Okay, because those things we have to nail them so that we know on a month-to-month basis, or however we're going to pay them,
Yeah.
quarterly or monthly or whatever.
But where does the money come to pay those payables? Was it budgeted in the first place and we just didn't have the cash flow, or is this extra budget?
Well, actually, in the initial planning, the idea was that we were going to set up a credit line much earlier.
I see.
And then, for various reasons, didn't do that. Part of it being that with the school and the battle it was politically and otherwise, the minute the school had to be put on probation, it's quite difficult to explain to someone that all those things that are in the budget, because your budget's based on a year-long
Needs.
needs coming from the state.
Yeah.
And so at the time we would have been setting that up, i.e. sort of October, we had a significant downturn in enrollment, partly due to the letter coming from the DES, the DOE saying, that the school wasn't viable, so it should closed. So we went from 95 students down to 60.
Yeah, you're not getting the sense of my question. Is most of the payables we owe, obviously FOAG, the law firm was one like this. Was this stuff we didn't budget and sooner or later this money has to come from a source outside of our budgeting? Or
Effectively, I think the answer to that question is if you're budgeting for 95 students and you get 65, that has an impact.
Yeah.
Two, I know that we bought furniture because we couldn't find a way to lease it even though
Okay.
it's
Well, that was an
what
assumption
you
in
would
the
do
original.
Okay.
as an
That was
operating.
an assumption in the original.
Of lease or buy?
Lease.
Oh, okay.
Folio is a big piece of the payables, substantial.
So some of that money
piece
might come out of our lease payment for desks and furniture next year, which we won't have to make because we own them now. So some of that money might come from next year's budget for a lease.
Ultimately, yeah,
for example.
depending on how it.
I mean, I just want to make sure eventually there's money somewhere to pay these, or the question is, where is that money coming for pay?
No, I think mostly it was front-loaded, and the revenue side is lower than had been forecast. We can find out.
So where will we get the money to pay those?
It's the money that's coming in. So right now, it does appear that if we can stretch them out over the next
Okay.
4 months or so,
The numbers all work.
that's right.
Okay, good.
Well, even, say, it's
But
necessary.
But you got the question I meant, right?
But that question gets answered in the next budget.
Okay.
But also,
Right.
I just want to point out though, Gordon, because I think it's important to understand that even in the revised budget in December, which caused for a call for 70 students,
Yes.
that all of these numbers worked at 70 students. And so it's not that there was any, misjudgment.
No,
in terms
that's why I
of
asked, was it cash flow, which wouldn't make me worry, because then when the cash comes in, look up, or was it extra budget, then where will the money come from? Eventually, we'll have to borrow it from future years to pay for the past,
Yeah.
but it doesn't sound like that's the case,
I'm sure there's
except for the law guys.
There are a handful of reasons for it. I mean, some of it is hourly workers instead of salary.
Right.
The other thing too, I guess, which is, it's just this funding formula is the weirdest thing. That just in terms of, we went from 64 students on opening day to 67 at the October 1 report. And we've been at 75 plus since before the Christmas holiday. And we're now at 86 today. And we won't see any change in an adjustment until June 30.
Yeah.
So what's weird about it really is that the state, the way the funding formula is set up, even though your enrollment climbs, and you have 2 pay periods in there, December 31 and the March 31, you actually won't see any change in your payment until June 3rd. So
I want to
it's
stick, can I ask though? I want to stick with this.
Yeah, sorry.
It is, as they say, what it is.
Yeah, that's right.
So, never mind. Now, for the next question. If we wanted to figure out all of the variances from the past coming forward to now, we could do that, if it would be useful. I think it's going to be more useful to reset the budget, given some of the unknowns which will become known over the next week to 10 days. Then we can look back if we want to.
Well, I think it would be
promise-
important to
I
know.
promise you that paying someone $50 an hour,
To see the
full on
variance.
salary or part-time basis would get half of that. That's okay.
That's going to show up, yeah.
Yes,
So
that's
that's
right.
why it's good to remember.
And that gets to the next piece of the adjustment. So the key now is of the critical payables that are the ones that are closest, that are at the age furthest and are the largest. Those are the ones that we'll rely on you, Tony, to negotiate in whatever way we can. And that's, no one will second guess you. Because that's not going to be helpful either. That also will be what it is. So Foley right now I know is $500 a month. That's what we're going to pay
That's
for.
reasonable.
Yeah, it is, more than reasonable.
You don't let the tail wag the dog.
Yeah, and so there are some other ones on there that we'll need to get at that we'll have to be a little more aggressive with. So before we can do a budget, we'll need to know what those specified items are for how much. And then the next piece, the key piece, because payroll is, as always, the largest piece of this on an ongoing basis, there are adjustments in personnel that will impact the budget too. And those are in varying stages of completion right now. And the financial implications of that, I think, though, we should probably be hearing about.
Yeah, I mean, basically, one of the changes for the school since December has been to take a look at the areas, particularly of special education and support for that. We wrote a corrective action plan, submitted that to the DOE, and that had three elements to it. One was to provide additional hours of support this year for students. The other was to provide an optional summer program for 2 weeks in August, and to provide additional hours next year as well. And that caused us to have to take a look at what we were doing in terms of those personnel, and to make adjustments that would allow us to hire an additional special education teacher, and to also look at the mentoring support for students as well. So we looked at getting someone in who would do both a physical education program that had elements for character development as part of it, not just the physical elements, and who could function as a sort of dean of students capacity, mentoring the students as well. And so
So we get into the positions themselves at the board meeting,
right,
probably through the program committee.
yeah, and they have an updated thing.
But as far as who is moving out or has moved out and who's moving in, impact to budget is the key question.
Well, and so I don't know if you want me to go through those specific changes, but we had the director of arts integration, and we have other arts teachers. Gordon has actually stepped in to help with developing a program of visiting artists, so we moved that position out and are making an adjustment to the nurse position, which is a
Volunteer,
subcontract
to be clear.
position.
Who, me?
Yes.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
Kathleen, that's on.
Yes, right.
We made a change in terms of the front office manager and have a host of parent supporters who have volunteered to come in and help us out there. And also in terms of the profile of one of the teachers in 4-5, we wanted to look for teachers who also had that special education background. And so we made changes in those positions and are in the final stages of interviewing and hiring a special education teacher, nurse, 4-5 teacher, and this PE dean of students position. And there's actually a net savings in doing that of $400 a week at the moment because of those $4 plus. And yet it will actually improve the program at all levels, provide us with more support when we need, where we need it, given the population of students, and at a time when the enrollment continues to climb significantly. So we've actually gone from 75 to 86, as you can see, well, if you've been in the morning meeting with guest stars this morning, every single chair, all of the wall, just.
So on that, so it's essentially a wash.
Yeah, and there's a small net gain, but yeah, it's a wash.
Okay, good.
Just quick question about cash flow again. Does the summer term, when the check comes in June and the check comes in September, does that allow you to catch up on your cash flow a little bit? Because don't you have way less expenses in the summer?
Yeah.
And then so that allows you to get the cash flow back up front a little, so you're not always that close to the edge.
Correct.
Right, although we may hear about a summer program.
And then that would cost, obviously, but at least you don't have a total 60 grand nut, do you?
Well, but then the next question is, okay, so what does the budget look like?
Yeah, plus the rent goes up.
Because it becomes a consideration, that's why the budget, that's why nailing these variables around cash timing, the payable schedule, and personnel, once it's known for certain. It's also the timing of the personnel.
Totally.
Because
started, right,
Yeah.
September or
Yeah.
June.
Okay. So we did follow no new hires except within existing costs.
Correct.
So no additional expense. All invoices to Susan Cooley, I think we got that going.
Yeah, very helpful.
All payment checks, et cetera, by Susan Cooley, so that was the whole thing, all the information is in a single instance of QuickBooks. And I think we've confirmed the reimbursement amounts.
Correct.
And timing, because some of them were a little different. Okay. And so I think, so we'll hear about the personnel changes from you, Tony, at the board meeting with the chair of the program committee.
Correct.
And we'll also get into the conversation I had with the commissioner this afternoon, especially around the director of education. And I think, it sounds like the office manager has been broken up into a volunteer position. If there is such a thing as a volunteer position. Good, does that sit well with you?
Yeah, it's working very well. I mean, the energy of the people involved. I mean, I think I had 5 parents here today,
Good.
all there.
Yeah, totally great energy.
So
All day.
I mean, it's
What's the timing on the nurse? Do we know that yet or not yet?
probably by the beginning of next week that will be effective. We're waiting to hear back from the candidate that we most like
Okay,
in the interview process.
okay. Good.
From everyone trying to jump in, nobody jumps in.
That's all right.
That's okay.
Those are the elements. Other questions?
You know, in a way, the 89 instead of 80 it's not a surprise. It's just them paying half of March early. I mean, it's still all gonna come out in the wash, so it was no real net gain. Because you were budgeting 20 a month, and just because they did half of December and half of March, that's wacky,
Right.
but
So the next piece of this that is still the critical element is to set up the management system for the payables. Cash, I think we understand. Personnel will know, certainly by the beginning of next week. And then it's the payables, it's the timing of the amount of payables. I think right now that's that's it.
Dave tells me the extra 10 was for his birthday. He had asked that to.
So, is there anything else we should be looking at? Or is this really about scheduling the next meeting for reviewing the budget?
Well, again, because you cited several variables that need to be, known first, when is the earliest time we'll know those? I throw that up hypothetically in, for factual response.
2 o'clock on Sunday? I mean, you'll have to count by the end of that meeting.
Well, that's the right question, Ken, because that ends up with, all right, so we want to get this not before the 7th, but certainly well before the next board meeting.
Absolutely.
Boy, you think about all those numbers, which include the lottery for all charters. That process finishes on March 15th.
Wait, but we'll know before then.
Oh, no, we will. But in fact, we have a lottery on Monday, this Monday the 7th, and we have another lottery on the 14th.
So it's, and in my experience at least, we can look at a budget, and I suppose we can make it a working meeting if I can impose on someone to help us, like Rick Crowley.
Mhm.
But tell me, the most important number, I said the 7th, I meant the 6th. We'll know on Sunday, right after the meeting. Well, can't you just manually know we picked up 25 to our 175, we're there?
Yeah, well, if we know a week ahead of the final lottery, but we actually have a lottery on the 14th as well, so on Monday the 7th, and the numbers don't close until the 15th. So we have.
But the
two
number
lotteries.
as of the 7th, isn't it? That's the day you...
No,
Well, then what is this, why is the 7th important?
because we thought that our last lottery was going to be on March 7th.
Oh, it's now back to the...
But we
14th.
have 3 posted for March, the 7th, the 14th, and the 21st, all in the same month. Those first 2 both count towards the figures for the DOE, which close for all charters on the 15th. So, and that's when they cap your enrollment for the budgeting for the following year.
Is the bulk of the people who have signed up in the first 2 open houses, have they gone through their first lottery yet? The people that take us to 175 from 80? Or are they waiting to go in the 7th?
No. We already
They've already cleared the lottery.
We have 86 who have already been selected out of the lottery.
Okay.
We have 86 that are currently enrolled.
Okay, so add them up, you mean.
We have, for this next lottery, we have over 20 already registered.
You mean in addition to the 172?
Correct.
So you're already up to 192?
Correct. And we haven't even, there are some who we have not, that we know they're coming in and being registered. And so not all of them are actually in the computer system yet.
But which 86 is the group that's going to school here? One of these, right? The group that's already here in school?
Which, yes, 86, one of those 86.
One of the is already there, right? So then these are
Yes.
new people, that's 172 and 20 more is 192.
Right.
So we really had just a chip shot to get to the 200, and as you say, looks decent on getting to anywhere from 220 to 250.
Right.
Well, that's the bottom line, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. But so on the financial piece and the implication of that, it's really, it's getting comfortable with a reasonable expectation of 200. By the way, that doesn't mean that they're all showing up on the opening day in September, but.
Gives us the chance to get 200.
That's right. So now it's, okay, we need to work back from a meeting that we would set now, tonight, so that we know when this committee meets again to review what would be the budget that you and Rick would put together. With a series of assumptions that we can define and list and agree to.
This is for next year?
Yeah, it's from, I think it's from here through the academic year 2012. 2011, 2012.
Yeah. Just a quick question on a technical thing, Tony, maybe you or Joe can answer, but if there are 3 lotteries in March, but the cutoff for the next school year is the 15th, what happens, at what point does the
21st got moved?
Yeah, well, no, that's a great question, Joe. My real thought was, if there's a later group, now I'm looking at worst case scenario, okay, that there isn't a full, 200 in by the 15th. So let's say we get the additional 5 or 6, in that last 2 weeks. When would that money hit the register for us? Would that be a 6-month delay like some of these other ones? Or?
No, the maximum, it's again, the maximum you can receive allotted funds for from the state,
Mhm.
is whatever your total reported enrollment, which goes in actually on April 1, in terms of being reported to the state.
Okay.
That whatever that number is, so for last year, for example, we were capped at 95.
I see.
So based on whatever we end up sending in our report for April 1, that's based on your March 15 numbers. And that will be our cap for next year. You can actually take more students
Oh, this
throughout the year, but you will not see any.
So actually, the
But
error,
we can't go over 200 because the charter, I think,
That's where.
Okay, so there's a cap.
That's full
Okay.
enrollment.
You cannot accept more
it's
than
full
one.
enrollment, so the key is, there's a cap in the charter application that was approved. There's now a cap for applicants. So if
and
it's
the next
same-
cap 240?
No, the next piece is how many people actually show up.
Yes, yeah.
Because that's ultimately, that's the number that matters.
I mean,
For
year
us.
3, is our cap year 3 240?
For year 3.
Yeah.
So right now, we only have a few minutes left.
Are we looking at calendar? I think we're looking at calendar dates.
We are, and we're looking at something after the 7th and before, I believe, the 15th.
Before the 15th.
Yeah, because I think it's important. We should know these things.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking that the 15th is actually, put the cap for next year. We have a lottery on the 14th. So if there's any difference between where we are on the 7th and where we're going to be on the 14th, it could be, I mean, I have no idea, but it could be relatively significant.
But we'll be limited to 200.
To 200?
Oh, so we're just going to build,
Yeah.
based on the numbers now, which are very solid, we're just going to build a budget.
That's why that number is the key number.
Except, well, we'll start to build, we'll start to build the budget on that at the risk of jinxing it. So that's fine, but there are other things that will have to happen on the personnel side, on the payable side, and actually the cash confirmation piece too, just to be sure. And so I'd suggest it's either the 14th or the 15th.
What days of the week?
Well, Monday, Tuesday's 14th, Tuesday's 15th, the 14th.
Because then I want to make sure that it's circulated, it's a public document, I want to make sure that the assumptions are understood and delineated too. And this committee may make changes to it.
And then we'll have time to.
Yes, that's exactly right. And it also says that, sometimes, especially with payables, if you have a month, it takes a month. If you have a couple of days, it takes a couple of days. It's term paper time. So,
You all do it at the same last second anyway.
well, if we didn't have the 7th
Yeah.
as a deadline, we would have lost our focus.
Is the 14th to make the assumptions that we're going to do, or to do a trial run and
No,
start
I think
feeding it up?
between now, it's, we can
This is
begin,
cool.
Right.
it's, the key variables are getting a complete fix on current cash, which is harder to do that.
The income side is going to be relatively easy to do.
But it's also reconciling what we have and what we do.
That's right.
Actually, we know exactly
To the penny.
where we are. That's not an easy exercise. Because there's necessarily been a bunch of different systems, and now it's, can we get it all into one place? Which is fine. I'm assuming it is all in one place, but it may take some time.
Well, here's a
The
quick,
payables piece would be the second, which is, all right, so exactly when are we going to pay these? In what frequency and what amounts? And that assumes an acceptance by the vendor. And then the third thing is the personnel. Sounds like we should know a lot of that by beginning the middle of next week.
Yeah.
So we know exactly what the hourly rate is, what the salary level is, or when it's starting, whatever those things are.
yeah, it's a quick and dirty. I know this doesn't work, and you're going to start squawking here in a second, tell me about the number, but if I take like 72 for the whole year, I come out with we've had about $850,000. If I add the 200,000 535 third year grant to our 200 times 11.7, I get 2,540,000. We'll be able to triple basically our outlays between this year and next year. So talk about building a school where we don't have to absolutely cut to the bone on employees.
In my experience, if you're a mission-driven operation, we will necessarily find things we have to spend that money.
Yeah, I understand. What I'm just saying
Things
is,
we have to
Yes,
spend the money on.
is that's why the 200
Don't
is the
have
key
the money
number.
to spend it on, so
Yeah.
it doesn't mean suddenly we're flush with.
No, it doesn't, I'm just saying, we don't have to run it like, oh, no, a gym teacher, oh, let's find the bus driver to do that, you know, or.
Well, no, but
Yeah.
there'll be some overlap.
Yeah.
No, there won't be, there's not a lot of staff to this. There are teachers and there, I mean, you know it better than anybody.
Can I just-
But you're right, it's much better. At a certain point, you get to a critical mass. Paying $19,000 a month in rent is one thing with 65 students. It's another thing with 240.
Exactly, or
So-
even 200.
That's
Yeah.
the tricky part now is to contain cash, know where we are, and now how have the assumptions changed in the last 3 weeks alone? And how will they change in the next week or two? Now, how do we piece it together? What's the budget look like? What's the list of assumptions? And that's a bigger exercise. It takes time. There's an iterative process that has to go into that.
Tony, can I just ask you on the enrollment? Do you have it broken down by grade or by grades, grade grouping?
Yeah,
So we know that the 192 is actually filling the slots that we.
Yeah, we just built, over the weekend, I built a new database for putting it in. And so I've got to finish putting in all the total numbers from the last lottery. And then I can actually print out.
Wait a minute, so you mean, wait, if you're over in fourth graders and you have a surplus that might not make it into the school, do they get to count in the 200?
That's a very good question.
It has to fit
It has to fit your enrollment.
I see, so the 192 is not necessarily, we gotta make.
That's why I asked.
That's why you need the 250, yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Well,
point.
no, or you'd have to make sure that you're filling the grades.
Yeah, and how close are we? Or is there a lot of surplus in grades right now?
I would rather wait for the exact
Hours.
database.
That's a question, I think, for the next meeting, too.
Uh-huh.
I guess my only open question is,
14 or 15?
right,
Although 14, but people.
14 and go for it.
14 is fine.
14.
I'd rather do the 15th. So you have the meeting on the evening of the 15th, we'll have had that last lottery.
is the lottery on the 14th or the 15th?
So,
14th.
well, so you could do it evening of the 14th, I suppose, just once you're processing all of it, but I'd like to have it all in the database and print out a report from it. But yeah, go through 14th is fine, I don't mind.
Okay.
14th is
So
fine.
do it for 6 o'clock on the 14th?
6 o'clock on the
Does that
14th.
work?
Is this meeting still going? Or are you about to adjourn it for the next?
We are still.
Actually, we'll do
Item
we'll
five.
do a review of the minutes.
Oh, good.
For that.
Because I want to say something about last year's cap.
Okay.
Last year-
Can we hop to the minutes
Yeah.
first? and then we'll-
Sure, we got to do that.
And the people who were there.
Come over next to me.
Motion
Yeah, that's good. Can we, have you checked out who was here? Who reviewed this?
I was here, I have not reviewed this prior to this.
James, you have any changes?
No, I just reviewed it, Joe, it's fine to me.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the middle of the second page. The annual budget will be proposed by the executive director to the finance committee. I was thinking the other open question was whether or not this committee needs to meet before approving the budget on the 14th.
No, because it's just proposed. Right, we're just proposing.
Well, I do want to make a recommendation to the board that night. So now we work back in time. Because otherwise we won't be able to. The next board, the full board meeting is on the 6th of April, is that right?
So are you suggesting we do a 15-month budget, is that what you'll do? Or a 3-month and a 12-month, or whatever?
same.
Yeah,
One would be,
all right, just from now to the end of next June 30th, 11,
right,
or 12th?
yeah, because we
Yeah.
have no enrollment for next year.
Yes, we will, all right, okay.
Um,
And we know expenses for this year and income.
Yeah, we know as is. Is that right, April 6th?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, we should start sending more and more.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
Well, this will do our best. Just April 6th. Yeah, because that actually will have
This
the,
meeting doesn't begin.
before we
Do the budget for next year, do the
Oh, good, okay,
so that's,
good, okay.
That's a good point. Okay.
Well, the motion to approve the minutes.
We need to approve the minutes of January 21st.
Can I still second if I wasn't there?
No.
I just can't vote.
Second.
Okay.
Second, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes, was that February 15th?
January 21st.
Yeah, because we did, the other one was
There's
the
been a-
fiasco of the 9 o'clock thing. and all
Yeah.
that, so.
Okay. Are approved. And set the next finance committee meeting is March 14th at 6 o'clock. I'd suggest the same agenda, although it's discussion of revised, discussion of revised budget for 2011, 2012. And leave it at that, because the whole thing is a combination of variance from whatever.
Quick question, again, from the government side, sorry. If I understood you correctly, we have a budget due to the DESC on April 1st, is that
Correct.
correct? If
correct.
the board doesn't meet until the 6th, 5 days later, do we need to submit a board-approved budget, or approve a pending board approval budget? Does it matter?
Let me check,
Okay.
let me check and find out.
So we may need to do something,
Super.
To move the board meeting up to get,
March.
if it has to be board approved.
we can figure it out, it's just a question of if it's an issue or not.
Yeah.
We'll also know.
Excellent question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we get the answer to that.
See what happens after you turn 50?
I turned 50 a couple months ago.
You did?
I'm sorry.
Right, no.
It's just ever since then, things have been falling off the table.
So we're set for the 15th at 6 o'clock, and I'd like a motion to adjourn the meeting of the finance committee.
Can I make a finance comment?
After we've,
After we've adjourned?
no, after we make the motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Oh, motion to
After
discuss.
discussion.
I move to adjourn.
Second? Discussion.
Yes. I remember last year there was a question about an error the CSO had made in telling us this very cutoff, just like this year. We thought we had way longer to determine our ceiling.
Yes.
And that it was always a great pain to us that in fact our ceiling was set at 95 because we had not been aware that the date was as early as it was, just like this year. Except last year it caught us totally by surprise. But in fact, that 95 ceiling they set never hurt us because we never got above that, did we?
No.
So it actually was not a game-changing mistake. And for a year, I've been thinking it was, but in fact,
No, it actually probably helped us because
yeah, you
in
got
the
hit
end,
for
the
the
correction
first quarter.
to the, if you had to do a correction to 64 or 67 from 120,
Yes.
that would have been
Ouch.
painful, to say the least. So actually,
One thing the
was
finance
far
committee
better.
does not need to do is hypothesize new areas.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
I was correcting the record.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, I was not hypothesizing, I was correcting the record, that in fact, we thought we had had a big flu last year. It's not a hypothesis.
Although with 120 applicants, would we have had 65 or 90 people show up? The motion to adjourn, all those in favor? Aye.
So moved.
Meeting adjourned at 7.